The Bob Murphy Show, episode 434.
There's a tidal wave coming. What you gonna do?
Get ready for another episode of The Bob Murphy Show, the podcast promoting free markets, free minds, and grateful souls. It's your source for commentary and interviews conducted by a Christian and economist. Now here's your host, Bob Murphy.
Everybody, welcome back to The Bob Murphy Show. Today I'm speaking with Martha Bueno, who many of you know from Twitter/X, and she was recently at the Ron Paul birthday bash, so some of you saw her there, I'm sure. But let me go ahead and just read from her official bio. Martha Bueno, a Miami native and bilingual advocate, was born to a family that fled communism, fueling her passion for freedom. A former entrepreneur, she ran a controversial 2022 campaign for Miami-Dade County Commissioner, District 10, gaining widespread media attention. Martha contributed to freeing Ross Ulbricht and is now working with Lynn Ulbricht, Ross's mother, to launch Mothers Against Cruel Sentencing, or MACS, to free nonviolent offenders from harsh sentences. So that's the specific reason that I had Martha come on the show. I saw her and Lynn at Pork Fest recently, and they were, talking about this new organization, MACS. And I said, hey, why don't you come on the show and tell everyone about that? We also chit-chat a bit about various libertarian-ish topics, including the story about her parents and how they fled from communist oppression. It's a cool story. So I have her tell that for you folks as well. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Martha Bueno. Martha, welcome to the Bob Murphy Show.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here and with talking to you.
Oh, well, glad you can make it. We were chatting that I saw you at Pork Fest and we didn't get to interact much. And I thought, at least I can get her on the Bob Murphy Show here. So ultimately what, the big thing, of course, I want to get you on is this MACS project that you're doing with Lynn Ulbricht. But I thought maybe before we get into that, I was looking at your Twitter feed and you have as we're recording this, it's right before the Ron Paul birthday party, which folks, some were asking me at this point, it would have already happened by the time you're seeing this episode. And I would not be there because I can't get down there, unfortunately. But I know you're planning on going. And so you recorded a thing about how Ron Paul changed your life. Do you mind, giving us the highlights of that?
Yeah, of course. The Ron Paul barbecue is this week, and I'm actually leaving tomorrow morning to Texas for this. So Ron Paul is the first politician that I ever saw that I believed in him, like listened to his message and was like, wow, that not only makes sense, because a lot of the times it's like, what? How does that make sense? Like these politicians are telling us that they're going to give you free things. There's nothing free. My radar would always go off. So not only would he say things, but I saw when Ron Paul was just attacked, and he stood his ground and he never, wavered from it. And he's the first politician that made me really think like, wow, you can do something good there. You can speak the truth. You can be truthful about what's happening. And he didn't make it very far, but I think he's changed a lot of our lives. I think a lot of people woke up thanks to Ron Paul. Like he's the first wake up of this like red pill movement going way, way back.
Yeah, the slogan I liked that I saw that became big was people saying Ron Paul cured my apathy. I always thought that was a good for people who had just said like, oh, they're all the same, and I'm not going to get sucked into this fake two-party, and when they're all, and he really was different. And like you say, it was partly where I think we're saying this, Martha, for like the benefit of younger people who might not have been politically aware when, he was making headlines and, in the people talk about the Giuliani moment. And I just cannot express enough how inconceivable a Republican in the primary would have said that, the stuff about, well, yeah, what do you think's going to happen when we're doing all that foreign policy stuff over there? There's going to be blowback. And just, what I mean? When the standard line among them was, yeah, they hate us because, we have a divided
freedom.
Yeah. Our bicameral legislature, they just can't stand it, So,
oh my gosh. I
electoral
know.
college drives them to suicidal bombings, So,
yeah.
So that was just crazy that he did that. And then when he was challenged, he didn't just, backpedal. No, what I was trying to say. No, he just stood his ground. I mean, like people just like, you can do that. And then anyway, and it didn't, the crowd wasn't with him in that moment, but like the people were. And then, yeah, he obviously like didn't win, but for people who don't know, he was like setting fundraising records. And so they were calling him Ron Paul money bombs and stuff. And whenever, I don't know if you remember this, Martha, but like there'd be online polls that, you know, like CNN or somebody would be conducting to see like, who's your favorite? And the Ron Paul people, whenever there was an online poll for which, you know, he was eligible, they would just circulate it like on Reddit boards or whatever they would use back then. And they would just flood it. And he would always crush everybody, such that after a while, like it just became common knowledge that, yeah, when you're doing political analysis, you just throw out the fact that Ron Paul wins all the online polls. And then you look at the number 2 and 3 to see, because they just, you know what I mean? And it was hilarious how like their excuses for why that doesn't count, you know, because, oh, it's like, well, these guys really like their candidate. So if you put that aside, so anyway.
I mean, it's also like one thing that I didn't say on that post, because, you know, it's kind of rude, but what I really liked about him, or he really taught me, was how corrupt the whole system is, right? So like he was winning in, you know, like people really liked him, and they never let him, when he was part of the Republican Party, they never let him actually become the candidate. I mean, it was just so corrupt. I thought it was it wasn't blatant back then. So you had to really be paying attention, but it kind of also opened my eyes to how much corruption. I grew up in Venezuela, and corruption is just so blatantly obvious. Everywhere you look, it's like, oh, look, another corrupt politician. But you know, Ron Paul exposed the American corruption for me, or at least the very beginnings of it. It's like, maybe that thing that happens over there happens here too.
It's funny sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just that.
I was going to say that, yeah, maybe you can, as coming from the outside, like see this better, but it really is hilarious to me how Americans typically think every other government on earth, and even the U.S. government, like once you go back towards like Watergate or earlier, we all know, oh yeah, they're corrupt, they're bad, and they were lying to the public, get us into wars. But right now, no, they're not lying about this war. Like, no, they wouldn't lie to us about, you know what I mean? It's always, there's like a rolling window of transparency and integrity that just keeps going along with us in current events.
I mean, this time they're really telling us the truth. Right now, now's the time.
Yeah.
It's
Gulf
ridiculous.
of Tonkin, okay, we can look at that. But no, right now, clearly Iran is 18 minutes away.
Yeah, they lied us into how many wars at this point? But this next one is just really, really the truth.
Yeah. And what's also funny too is a thing where, you know, for a long time, I think a majority, I don't know what the numbers are, the survey results vary, of course, but most people think for sure the government is lying about what happened to JFK. And then if you put a lot of, you know, a big chunk think that like the CIA had something to do with it. And so you would think like, if you believe that, then how come, you know what I mean? Like that should have some consequences or implications, but it doesn't seem for a lot of people that it does. They kind of just like, well, yeah, that's a thing, and I'm going to go about my life. What else can I do?
Who's going to take care of it? And I think that's the real issue. You know, like I think so many people know that it's corrupt, but it's like you're used to it, or you're like, oh, well, yeah, whatever, because it doesn't really affect your daily life. Yeah. Now, more and more, it's affecting our daily life, and I think people are starting to really get upset about things. But I mean, it's not, quote, bad enough. It just, you know, and when it does get bad enough, unfortunately, at least in my experience, my parents' experience, having fled to now authoritarian regimes, I feel like it takes a while. You know, it's like the boiling of the frog where they turn up the temperature. And then when it's like boiling, what do you do at that point? Right. So that's unfortunately, I think, how things tend to go.
Well, it's funny now that we're sitting here and like, these rubes, like I was guilty of that myself. What prompted me to go off on this tangent was you saying how the corruption, even the Republican Party with Ron Paul, that I had people, like I would see the report or they would like message me and, you know, tell me things and whatever that I'm paraphrasing and just like distilling it down, but I heard a lot of stories and I don't remember the details about which state convention, but it was the kind of thing where, oh yeah, we had the votes and we went in, and then at the last minute, you know, the chair changed the procedural rules or whatever, and then they held this thing that happened and our delegates weren't there yet. And you know what I mean? Just like a lot of like sneaky tricks or whatever to make sure that he didn't win their state's, you know, their primary or caucus or whatever the heck, you know, the thing was at that thing. So, and I'm just saying I was naive enough that I was actually surprised they were that naked about it. Like I understood that the media was out to get him and Fox News was bearing, but to me, that seemed qualitatively different. Like if Fox News just doesn't talk about them versus people clearly sabotaging the democratic process. Like I still thought that was a sacrosanct thing, and Republican chair people of local committees would not do something like that. And it seemed like some of them were. So
we can go further back. I mean, Ross Perot was also kind of one of those like wake ups, you know, it's like there's been so many, and yet we're like, no. So in 2020, I worked on Joe Jorgensen's campaign, and so many people are like, well, if she was good enough, she'd be like, she'd be one of the candidates that we're hearing about. And it's like, how do I explain to people that it has nothing to do with how good a candidate is, and it has everything to do with how corrupt our system is, And so I learned a lot, and I saw a lot of how people here in America just want to believe that only those two people that make it to that, presidential are the ones that are like qualified or that have a chance or whatever that thing is, that magic sauce. It's like, oh man, the system is so corrupt, and it's not good.
So you said something a minute ago. I guess it doesn't shock me, but can you just, if you don't mind? So what? Your parents fled from Venezuela? Like, were they born and raised there, and then?
No, they fled from Cuba, which is that story that you wanted to know about my dad. So I guess I'll just get into it.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. So the background is Martha. It was recently his 80th birthday.
His 80th birthday.
Yeah, and you were telling a story about like what a cool guy, like a larger than life figure your dad is. So I asked folks before, like, do you mind telling that? And so go ahead and just give us the full shebang.
I think my dad's story is just so cool, and it's my dad and my mom. To be fair, I got to be fair to my mom. My parents were born and raised in Cuba, high school sweethearts, and at some point, my dad, of course, the revolution, and my dad tried to go to school, and they basically in Cuba, if you don't agree to that system, to the Marxist regime, if you're not part of it, you'll never get your degree. You'll never be able to exercise. You'll never be able to work. And my dad is a staunch, no to any of that. So he tells my mom, hey, let's get married. I'm going to leave this place. I'm going to break out. I'm going to go. And so they get married. My dad tries to walk towards Guantanamo, the U.S. naval base in Guantanamo in Cuba, gets lost, spends a few days, walking around, gets caught, gets thrown in a political, the prison for political prisoners, where they try to brainwash you. Usually people spend years in there, but my dad kind of figured it out early and was like, yeah, viva Fidel, viva the revolution. Yeah, everything's great. And because he was a farmer, they put him to work in a work camp where my grandmother set up the whole thing and my mom carried it out. They broke him out of jail, him and his cousin and a few other people, and drove him to a city right next to Guantanamo, the naval base called Caimanera, where my dad hid for about a month and then was able to swim to freedom, was able to swim to the naval base swam over a mile in the dark. I mean, I just find I don't even go in the water, like in the ocean at night. I mean, to swim a mile in the dark to make it to Guantanamo, makes it to America. They pull him up. They're like, welcome to America. They fly him to New Jersey. And, that's how my parents' life in America started. Then my dad starts a business in Venezuela because, I mean, it was in the 70s, Venezuela was the richest country in Latin America. I mean, Cuba was before then, and then, communism. And then Venezuela is the richest country in Latin America. They moved there. And, I lived there until 1995. Is
that where you were born?
I was born here in the U.S. because my mom was like, I'm not having a kid here, but my parents were living there. So
right.
I was born in the United States to 2 American citizens at that point. I'm not an anchor baby. I have to make that clear because everyone's always like, oh, you're an anchor baby. No.
Well, I just wanted to make sure you're eligible to be president.
Oh,
in case you want to run.
No. I can tell you one thing. I already ran for office, Bob. I'm good. I've learned my lesson.
I'm going to ask you about that in a minute. But
boy. Yeah.
We're just establishing the constitutionality of it. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not an anchor baby. My parents were living in Venezuela, but my mom didn't want to give birth to me without any family, in Venezuela. So she came to the U.S. I actually flew to Venezuela 9 days old. So, no, I'm fully American with Cuban roots. I'm not Venezuelan by any means, but I do. I say that I carry Venezuela in my heart because, I mean, it's just such a beautiful country. I love it. And I was able to watch there the same thing that happened in Cuba in different, I think faster really happened in Venezuela, this, I guess there's no better way to teach you communism or socialism than to experience it, and see how a country that, it had problems like all countries, but to see the drastic change from a relatively free country to one that is you know, I mean, one of the poorest countries in the world right now.
Yeah, and also too, like just as an economist, this was when back, I don't know, 8 years or so. It was when like they had serious food shortage, like the shelves were empty and people were like crossing the border just to go get toilet paper from
zoo animals.
Yeah.
Toilet paper. They needed food. They ate the zoo animals. I mean, what a horror! Like,
and what I would say that what they were doing, among other things, is like they were printing a bunch of money and then imposed price controls.
Right.
And so it was like, of course, the obvious, literally textbook Econ 101 result is the shelves will be empty. And I was listening to NPR at the time just to hear their coverage, and they were their commentary was, oh, well, the soldiers, the military has food and whatever, but they're withholding it from handing it out to people and they're selling it on the black market for the high prices. It was like, yeah, but why does it take soldiers to hand out food and toilet paper? Like, that's the issue. You know what I mean? So even there, they were trying to blame greed and capitalism for why the people were, like you're saying, eating dogs and stuff, like literally. And it was just amazing. And I even knew an economist, like an Austrian school person, economist down there who obviously got it. And I asked him, I said, do your economist colleagues at least understand why this happened? And he was like, yeah, some of them kind of do. But even the professional economists there were just like, geez, it must be like foreign speculators attacking our currency, as opposed to you're running the printing press and imposing price controls. What do you think is going to happen? It was just shocking.
Was so crazy to watch growing up. I mean, I remember I'd go to the store and buy, you're a kid, you go and you buy candy and it's like, oh, here's my Bolivar. And, you can buy something with it. And then, you go to the store the next day and it's like, now it's 2 Bolivares. And it's like, wait, what? And then the next week it's 5 Bolivares. And then, at one point there's just not enough money. It's just, you go to buy an egg and it's like 400. It's like, wait, what? And it happens so quickly. It happens so incredibly fast. So I think it's given me, a lot of insight to be able to look at stuff happening in the US and be like, I've seen that before. And you probably aren't going to like the results. Although I didn't study economics, I do find it fascinating. I feel like I lived it in living color.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's frustrating. Like it's it doesn't take an economics degree to know that. Well, what do you think? This is pretty standard. So like, why is everything getting so expensive? Because they're printing the money, and I guess in their mind, well, gee, we have to keep up with the rising prices. Like, how are we going to pay the government workers? We got to print more money. So
so what they ended up having was like rations. They had no milk. They told farmers, this is what you're going to get paid for your milk, but everything started creeping in price. So how could they afford to produce the milk at that price? So they're like, well, we're just not going to work. Ergo, no milk. I mean, it was so clear cut. But you see it here in Florida when we have hurricanes. It's like they're price gouging. Right. Listen, somebody's got to get in their car and drive us down whatever, water bottles from wherever the hurricane didn't happen. That's going to cost some money. You got to get somebody out of bed to do that. It's like, no price gouging. Well, then we don't have water. Thanks. Yeah. It's so obvious.
Yeah, I heard a story. I mean, that stuff too. It's funny. Like, even people who normally are like okay with capitalism and markets and whatever, when it comes to something like that, like, oh, come on, this is just a matter of human decency and stuff. And okay, but prices still, have a job to do anyway. So I'm preaching the choir.
Who's going to do right? Exactly.
Yeah,
who's going to do it?
One on that I heard where it was just amazing. That the guy was some economist. I think it was Mike Munger. I saw him giving a talk, and he said he saw footage. I don't know if he saw it with his own eyes or if he saw it on the TV, like the 6 o'clock news or something, but it was a situation like you're describing. There was some natural disaster. There were long queues of people, waiting like for the Red Cross was there or something, handing out basic, kits or whatever. And then there were some guys that like drove in with like a pickup truck full of like bags of ice or something. Cause that was, I guess this was in the summer. It was like, that was a very, valued commodity at that moment. And they were just sitting there, selling them for what would have been much higher than you would normally pay at the grocery store for a bag of that amount of ice. Because, like you said, they loaded up their truck. I think they came from out of state. So to make it worth their while and everything.
Their time,
And they said that the police came and there were people in line for these guys waiting to give them whatever, the $10 bill for the bag of ice or whatever they were charging. They said the police came, shut them down, took the bags of ice and cut them open and dumped them on the ground to melt. And the people in line were applauding the police for sticking it to these price gougers. Like the people who had been waiting, wanting the ice and now knowing, I could see if the police stole it from them and handed it out. Like, I wouldn't have agreed with that, but at least that would have made sense. But no, they destroyed the ice. And the people who had wanted it were applauding when they could have just not bought it, and then that would have been the same outcome. It was just amazing to see the psychology, at play there.
Yeah, it happens here in Florida a lot. Again, hurricanes. It just, it's so obvious if if you like, just if you are like in that case, if your food is going bad in the fridge and you need ice, you're willing to pay a premium, so that your food doesn't go bad. Like, I can't stand. This is kind of my problem with my online persona, because these things just drive me crazy. And so I will argue with people nonstop. And it's like, oh God, anyways, I should probably stop arguing with people over this type of stuff.
So you mentioned there, well, actually, I have to ask the obligatory question. I mean, is it weird? There must be a sense in which it's like, do you feel like Cassandra or something from, Greek mythology, that you've seen this happen, and so then you come here and now you can see it, whereas the Americans here are like, well, no, we're a free country. Like, we're not some third world thing where you don't get food on the show. I guess COVID kind of was a snapshot where people where you saw like, even here it can happen where you can go to Walmart and there's just no toilet paper. Like that, I think that kind of freaked me out even though I, could sit there and understand the supply chain, logistics, but still there was something just kind of shocking about that you go and see empty shelves everywhere.
It's not shocking. What I would say the shocking thing is we live through that and still people don't realize, because at least like every other place where, like my parents are from Cuba, Venezuela, people I think kind of understand now, maybe, I don't know. But how did Americans live through COVID and still at this point still think that this is the right way moving forward? Like, government is the problem. How is this not blatantly obvious to everyone who looks at it? I think that's really the problem. Do I see it coming? Do I still see it coming? Yeah, clearly. And I'm sure the same way my father felt growing up in Venezuela. I'd listened to my dad telling his friends like, oh, I've seen this before and this isn't good. This happened in Cuba. It's going to happen here. And back then, again, the economy was great in Venezuela. And everybody's like, Cubano, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, this is Venezuela. We have petroleum. We have because it's true. Venezuela has every natural resource like known to man. Like, they have more petroleum than Saudi Arabia. They have gold. They have diamonds. They have emerald. Like, they have minerals. They have fertile land. They should be one of the most, if not the most prosperous lands, on earth. And yet they're one of the poorest. And it is because of the amount of corruption. It's because their courts don't work. It's because of their economic policies. And, it's crazy that in America, we don't have necessarily those same resources, but we have something, that freedom or whatever, and we're giving it away or we're destroying it because of some ideology that it's toxic. I mean, I'm seeing it now. This is the country that we used to be called the melting pot. We celebrated people who were from other places. We want brain drain. That's what we want. We want to bring all of, the mental resources from around the world here. And now it's like, oh, you're not from, to the point where I even told you, by the way, I'm not an anchor baby because I'm being attacked. It's like, oh, well, you celebrate Venezuela and Cuba because I had, the flags in my profile. It's like, oh my God, I do. I celebrate where my family's from, but I also celebrate this amazing country that we're losing because we just don't understand. We're just being ridiculous. And so, yeah, I've been like kind of the canary in the coal mine, like squawking for years now. And now I think more people are seeing it, and it's scary. I think the scariest thing is nobody's really doing anything about it. Like, I know what comes after this. Like, it's going to be, the pendulum swings harder in each direction every time. So, however you feel about Trump, the next guy is going to be a further swing to the opposite end of Trump, but a harder to the left or harder to whatever side. And then that's going to swing back to an even harder on the right. And it's just, it circles the drain and the outcome is never good.
Hey everybody, Bob Murphy here with a quick tip for small business owners. If your business isn't showing up online, your competitors are getting the leads and you're missing out. Well, that's where Persist SEO comes in. For over 15 years, they've been helping local businesses grow through SEO, paid ads, and the latest in AI-powered search optimization. so you stay visible and competitive in the digital age. Whether you're in home services, legal, or healthcare, Persist SEO delivers real results without locking you into long-term contracts or overwhelming you with tech jargon. Visit ineedseo.help or call 770-580-3736 to schedule your free consultation. That's ineedseo.help. Easy to remember, powerful for your business. Yeah, like I noticed that in terms of the vitriol in terms of politics. Like, so I started really paying attention to politics in the mid '80s, and and people that they would call Ronald Reagan a stupid buffoon and make fun, but there was still like a tad like a modicum of civility and sort of like, well, he's the president, you know what I mean? Like there was still that, and then like when Bill Clinton was in office, like the right wing, Hillary Clinton would call it like this, smear machine or something. I forget what her terminology was. But like that really kicked in. You could understand it was like, well, he was, the stuff he got caught doing, like that was a level of like sleaziness that you could kind of excuse. Okay. But then, then when George W. Bush comes in, oh, he's a war criminal. I think he was, I guess. So I'm not saying that there's any problem, but I'm just saying like the level of the attacks ramping up on both sides. And then, he's Hitler and so forth. So anyway, yeah, I do see that. And then it's almost like that perversely, because the people who defend, George W. Bush hear everyone calling him a war criminal, they tune that out. And so they don't listen. It's like, well, no, there really are, they have torture sites around the world and secret black sites that they're disappearing. So anyway, it kind of like inoculates people so they don't want to hear it anymore. You know what I mean? So it's this weird thing where they overlook the legitimately awful things their people are doing just because, as you say, the pendulum keeps swinging. And it's like, well, what they did last time that they had power was so awful, I don't care. You know what I mean? And it keeps like justifying.
Now this time,
right.
It's like, well, and it's just, it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And we defend instead, because we're on teams instead of Team America, we're just on my team, your team. It's like, you have to defend what your team is doing. And it's not good. It's definitely not good. And I really hope we can break the cycle. I don't know, I've never experienced a country getting out of the situation they created. Mm-hmm. And that also is scary to me because I don't have the answer. I can tell you what I've seen and I can tell you how it resembles what we have going on here, but I don't have, there's no example for me to follow of like, oh, this country kind of came out of it,
right.
Except for maybe the country of Georgia, which I've been very close to. I've been to twice. It's, for a little bit there, they look like they had come out of, being part of the Soviet Union, and they were very libertarian principles going in the right direction. And now they are back to, being taken over by Russia. So it seemed like there was a somewhat of an example for us to kind of, oh, look, this miniature country of 3 million people over by Russia is coming out of it. And then, maybe not. So.
Yeah, I think I share your pessimism too with the U.S. that that's why I ended up writing a thing about like how the logistics of how Texas could secede, like in terms of like what if they actually want to do it legally and blah blah blah, like what? Because I thought the only way people will get serious about like cutting spending and whatever is if the dollar crashes or something. Like I don't think people will just say, we should probably get ahead of this. Like it just didn't seem like that was going to happen. So, and then with Trump 2.0. Again, like you're saying, whatever people think of him, like he had such a hodgepodge, like a coalition that he built that, I wouldn't have predicted beforehand. So I kind of kept my mouth shut just to see like, well, I don't want to be a party people, but then, since what's been happening, a lot of it, it's like, it just seems like sending the right people to Washington is not going to work.
No, definitely not. I feel really guilty actually for the situation we're in. I asked
Is it your fault? What did you do?
No. But I did ask libertarians to vote for Trump.
Okay.
In order to free Ross.
Yeah.
That was kind of a big deal.
That is the one thing. And I was so glad he did that because I was like, if he doesn't follow through on that, like that's just really, because also like I think he personally assured Lynn, right, that
he did
beforehand.
Yes.
Like, so I mean, for me, that would have been the travesty, not, the public policy, blah, 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 but just like, no, if you tell somebody's, a mother that we're going to pardon your son and then you don't, like, come on, or whatever.
He actually had a clip not too long ago of him talking at some press conference about Lynn and Ross and how she's a wonderful mother. And, which I guess if I may talk about MACS. So for
that was the reason. Yeah. So go ahead. That was officially the reason. And we're just chit chatting here and the camera's rolling. Yes, please, Martha.
Yeah, no. So
what is MACS?
That's a perfect segue.
Yes.
So for those that don't know who Lynn is, if you've been living under a rock and don't know, because I feel like at least your audience probably does, but Ross Ulbricht created the Silk Road, which is a free market website on the dark web using Bitcoin, very early Bitcoin. He was caught, I think, 2013, and was convicted of all conspiracy kind of bogus charges to 240 years in prison, which is an enormous sentence for anyone, double life sentence plus 40 years. And his mom, who at the time was in her mid to late 60s, was like, not my kid, and fought relentlessly for the 11 years that he was in prison. And this year, Trump promised to free him, and he did. He said day one. It was technically day one, but freed Ross. And so Lynn has this incredible energy. Not only that, she's done something that I think very few people know how to do or have managed to do. She's absolutely incredible. And, she always said it was about more than just freeing her son. And now that he's free, this miracle happened, this thing that, we were working towards it, but I don't think anybody really thought that we'd achieve it. And all the credit goes to Lynn and to Angela McArdle that helped the chair of the Libertarian Party really made that deal come through. And so, it happened, and now we're just going to keep going forward, because there's one of the things that Lynn learned, unfortunately, through what Ross was going through, is that there's so many more people with these cruel and unjust sentences in the United States. A lot of it from the third strike law, which is basically if you've been convicted twice and then you do anything else, well, that's your third strike. Now you're going to be put away for life. And we've identified at least one person that we really want to work on, a mother of four who was put into prison, because of the third strike law. And now she's going to spend the rest of her life. So her kids are going to never have their mom again because this woman, some minor cannabis infraction. And now because of that, she'll be in prison for life. So Lynn established Mothers Against Cruel Sentencing. We like to say mothers and others because people are like, well, I'm not a mother. It's like, no. It's just, we are mothers, and we invite everyone to join us to work on these cases, to raise their awareness, which is what Lynn did with Ross, but also to help us get to the right legislators to make sure that they are aware. And so it's a kind of a double prong approach, the same way we did with Ross. The public had to know about him so that it's a politically viable thing. Politicians only do things when it's unfortunately expedient for them. They will only move that needle. They'll only sign that thing. They'll only do if they think it's going to benefit them. So we need to raise public awareness about these cases and then go to the legislators and offer them these wins. And that's what we're doing with MACS. We just started. We launched at the Bitcoin conference just a few months ago, and off to a roaring start, I feel like.
Okay, great. Yeah. So again, folks, it's MACS, Mothers Against Cruel Sentencing is what the acronym stands for. I'll of course,
and
put
if they
links.
can follow us on social media, on X is where we're at primarily right now. It's MACS Sentencing. So MAC Sentencing.
Okay, great. Yeah. And folks, we'll put links to all this stuff too at the show notes page. So Martha, can you clarify though, let me back up a second. For one thing, for the Ross case, what intrigued me is the first time I heard Lynn, I forget where I was, but yeah, like among other things, folks, like when Martha says it was up, she just said, that's my boy. I got to do what I can. I mean, she just went around to any audience that would hear her, and she would just get up and explain what happened. Because I noticed there were two things. One is some people in the beginning were kind of like, well, yeah, in a just world, selling drugs would be legal, but you know what? It's illegal, and he got caught. What do you want me to do? And I was like, no. They didn't accuse. And the other thing is, two people thought like, oh, but didn't he hire a bunch of hitmen or something? So it was important for Lynn to explain to people that even if you thought he was a drug dealer, like he got a worse sentence than Pablo Escobar.
Yeah.
So clearly something is weird there. Like they were definitely, you know, making an example of him. This wasn't just, well, hey, if you're going to deal drug, you know, I mean, no, they just really did way more to him than they did for literal drug kingpins who, you know, had killed
Murdered
people.
people.
Yeah. And the thing with it is just so people realize, I know you know this, Martha, and I'll link to it, folks. I went through and documented this stuff in case like all the corruption and how we quote know that he tried to hire people, like comes from guys like government officials who were on the case that were convicted later of stealing Bitcoins, for example. You know what I mean? Like that's and they never even charged him.
No.
With that. So it wasn't that, the double life plus 40 was the website plus no, they literally didn't even include that in the charges, let alone did they convict him.
But they used it in his sentencing. The judge used it in his sentencing. And one of the things as a libertarian that really caught really upset me, and I think upset a lot of libertarians, is the judge used in the sentencing, she said that Ross's libertarian ideology is dangerous. And that was one of the reasons why she needed to put him in prison. And so if Ross is so dangerous, then am I dangerous? Is the government going to come after me too? Because I also believe that as an adult, if I want to engage in, drug use or whatever, not that I do, but if I wanted to, it's my right. It's my body. Mm-hmm. And if I don't own my body, who does? And so there's a lot of like libertarian ideology here with Ross's case. But yeah, what they did to him was just, it's such a disgusting overuse of government or just abuse of government even. What they did to this man. And I mean, he has not told the stories. He told a little bit at the Freedom Fest stage. For those that are interested in seeing it, Freedom Fest has that video out there. I think Ross on his profile has it, where he describes just a little bit of what he went through in prison and what other men and women in prison go through. Women get raped in prison. Men get tortured. He describes a device that they tie you down to a table or whatever, and it leaves people with permanent body injuries. So what the United States is doing, where they're forcing us to pay taxes to support, these prisons where they are torturing people, we are helping the system by paying our taxes to these, people who are doing these really terrible things. And I think most Americans are not aware of what is happening within our systems. We see, oh, he's in prison. Well, throw him away. That person obviously is a terrible person.
Yeah, he must have done something wrong.
Must have done something, and he deserves everything that happens to them there. He, she, they, whatever, deserves it. And, it's just, that's not who we are as Americans, I don't believe. And it is that belief that we can and should do better that has us continuing this fight. Yes, it was about getting Ross out of jail. But now that he is out, all of those people that he left behind, we can't forget about them. Those people deserve a voice too. And a lot of them don't have a Lynn Ulbricht as a mother. I hope that everybody listening has a mom like her that'd be like, not my kid, but I mean, my parents are now, my dad just celebrated his 80th birthday. If something happened to me, they wouldn't be able to help me out, and we all deserve some, at least the ability to make our case and to be able to be heard by, our people. And that's, I think, where we're going with this. We need to do something to right the wrongs.
So well said. And just so I understand, so MACS per se, is that just, as the name suggests, saying it's against cruel sentencing? Like, in other words, you can debate whether or not selling cocaine or even something less, being in possession of a bag of weed or something should be illegal. But on top of that, like just ridiculous sentences that some of these people are getting. And like you're saying with the 3 strikes thing, for people who don't know, the background of that is there was a movement, I don't know, was it like in the late 80s or something? But where
late 80s or 90s?
Yeah, it's definitely late 80s, early 90s.
I think Biden had a very big part on that 3rd strike rule as well. It was part of that like really harsh, drug war. We're not going to let you go through. Or was it Clinton? I'm a little confused as to which one of them. But yeah.
I know Biden, because, and for freaks, Joe Biden has had a long career of, quote, public service. So he was, this is back when he was in Congress. But yeah, I know, he was real, quote, tough on crime and everything and bragging about putting all this. So anyway, there was this notion that, these liberal judges are just giving a slap on the wrist. And so they took away the discretionary, like judges, if the jury convicts somebody, then it's still up to the judge, in certain cases to decide the sentence. And so the so-called 3 strikes rule would take away the discretion. So we're just saying, like, if it's the 3rd felony conviction, no, they have to get at least this much. I don't care what the extenuating circumstances are. And so like what lawmaker wouldn't want to vote for that, right? Because if it looks, I'm tough on crime and everything. And so of course that went through. But then among other things, like you're saying, Martha, like you could be convicted of a felony when you didn't really do anything in the grand scheme. There's lots of felonies probably many people commit all the time and they just don't get prosecuted for it. And so it gives the government this incredible leverage to lean on people. And then with all the plea bargaining stuff, it really is, a
lot of people serving life that shouldn't be serving life, or serving these, 240-year sentence for Ross. And he's not the only one. Leonard Picard was serving a 200-year sentence as well. And he was convicted of selling LSD. I mean, it's just these outrageous sentences. It's like, why double life? Like, what if he happens to get, if he comes back, he gets another life? Like, who's even coming up with these things? So yeah, there's a really long laundry list of people that are serving these horrible sentences. Lots of people that just don't deserve to be in a cage. And it doesn't make our society any better. A mother, a woman that didn't maybe hurt anyone, physically, nobody's scared of her. Why is she in a prison cell? Why not give her house arrest? Why not make, her family's problem versus putting her on the taxpayer dime where we have to, support her 3 meals a day and her health care and her vision and her dental. Like there's just, it's so cruel and something has to be done. And we must raise awareness. People need to know what is happening and see about getting out as many people as we can that deserve to be out.
Mm-hmm. And like you said, that we alluded to a minute ago, I think part of the issue, at least when I was growing up, is people just kind of assume, because I would see campaigns like to free death row inmates or so, or not even to free them, but just to say, hey, there's open questions and maybe, we should look into this more. And I think people just had this idea that, well, come on. I mean, if you're going to get arrested and they're going to go through all this and you're going to, come on, it's not like, how could an innocent person go through all that? And then now as people learn more and just see stuff with their own eyes. And that's, I think, I guess the one silver lining of all the crazy lawfare they threw at Donald Trump is that now Fox viewers realize that, the FBI sometimes are the bad guys, whereas before it was like, Law and Order. So I guess that's the one thing.
They're seeing it that way. I think that, there's still a lot of people that think that the government is the good guy and, the FBI or the CIA or your local police, they're all the good guys. And so, and in a lot of cases they are. I have nothing against, individual people. As a collective, I think we just need to understand that sometimes you don't get a fair shake. And hopefully, if you are ever in that situation, you'll get a fair shake, that type of thing. Like, hey guys, wouldn't you want somebody looking over at your case and being like, hey, this doesn't make any sense? We throw away a lot of really good people, a lot of incredibly intelligent people that would be a benefit to society. And we ruin a lot of families. We ruin a lot of society. I mean, we have this crisis because of the war on drugs, which is another one of those topics that I think we could go off on many tangents with. But because of the war on drugs, you can look around and see so many fatherless homes, which then has its unintended consequences. You have, single mothers. There's huge amounts of statistics that show that single mothers are more likely to raise men who are going to go to jail themselves. And so, it's just like this prison pipeline that we've created. And we're just putting a large amount of people. We are, for a free country, the country with the highest rate of incarceration in the world. And so what are we doing? And why are we paying taxes to continue to ruin people's lives, ruin communities? Like, it's just, it doesn't make sense. Nothing about this makes sense. And it's very frustrating to see. It wasn't my son in prison, but how can you meet Lynn and not be like, oh my God, I have to help this woman. She was just so sincere and she just would do anything to free her son. And I was so honored that to be able to help her, to be able to spend, the last 3 years of Ross's incarceration going around. And it was kind of fun in a lot of ways. Believe it or not, we had a lot of good times, but it was also very sad. And just Lynn lived with such a burden on her, from all of this. And there's just like her. The thing that gets to me every time is just like her. There's so many people in this country going through that. And there's, yes, there's a lot of organizations helping. There's the Last Prisoner Project. There's so many places, but we're not being as effective as we need to be. And Lynn's got 100% success rate at the moment. So, we got to keep that going, hopefully.
Okay, well, that's an optimistic, I think, note to end on here. I know we're looking at the clock. We got to wrap this up. So, folks, my guest has been Martha Bueno. Martha, thanks so much for your time and everything you've been doing. And hopefully, folks, you can check out the links and they'll be able to help you guys out.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate that.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. See you next time.
You've just experienced another episode of The Bob Murphy Show, the podcast promoting free markets, free minds, and grateful souls. For more information and to subscribe to this podcast, visit bobmurphyshow.com.